Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I've got Brian Batko on today. We're going to be talking about the George Pickens situation, fallout, and the bigger picture look at how the Steelers have handled wide receivers in recent years with all the different trades they've had to make to send away guys that didn't work out. Are they making big mistakes, or are these just smart moves getting rid of players at the right time? We'll talk about that, other elements heading into Steelers rookie camp, and a special interview with DJ Thomas Jones, one of the Steelers undrafted free agent rookies, and the special story about how he looked out for his mother as we're heading into Mother's Day weekend. All here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko, and we are your Steelers writers here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. As always, you can find this show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, like Chipped Ham and Football from Brian Batko, that comes out every Tuesday. As always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're ever injured in an accident or you need help with workers' compensation rights, be sure to call Edgar Snyder Associates today, 1-800-1-800-94-EDGAR. Remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, big news came this week. We got to react to that pretty quickly with Ray Fittipaldo on Wednesday, but now we've let it settle in a little bit, and I think there's a stepping back that could be used to just look at how the Steelers have handled wide receivers in recent years. I put this out there. I looked at all the big name wide receiver trades the Steelers have made in Mike Tomlin's tenure, whether it was Antonio Holmes in 2010 for a fifth, Martavis and Bryant in 2018 for a third, Antonio Brown in 2019 for a third and a fifth, Chase Claypool for a second in 2023, Diontae Johnson in 24 for Donte Jackson and a pick swap, and now George Pickens in 25 for a third rounder and a pick swap. You look at those, I think arguably you could say the Steelers got the best of all those trades. Maybe Antonio Holmes, not as much because he played really well for the Jets and almost beat the Steelers in the AFC Championship game. But there's all Kevin Colbert said that pick helped them acquire Antonio Brown. So maybe you don't consider that. But is this a good thing that the Steelers have been able to acquire these guys, get something out of them, make them talents that have big names, and then offload them? Or is this more of a problem that they need to just avoid moving forward?
I don't know that I fall on one side or the other. I think it's obviously unfortunate that you even have to have the discussion. It's unfortunate that Mike Tomlin and the coaching staff or whoever else couldn't get more out of these guys to turn over a new leaf and stay productive and see a second contract in Pittsburgh. Because, I mean, everybody we've discussed here, and I almost put Santonio Holmes in a separate bucket. That was very early in Mike Tomlin's tenure. He didn't have the same juice that he does now in terms of drafting and developing players and all that. But, obviously Antonio Brown, he reached his potential. And then unfortunately it went off the deep end. Martavis Bryant, he couldn't really stay out of his own way with some of his own personal demons that he was battling, which maybe there's no coaching that. Diontae Johnson and Chase Claypool, I don't think either of those guys had negative reputations coming out of college into the draft, but
they did not.
Once they saw success here in Pittsburgh, they kind of lost the plot. So those are two that I think you can kind of look at Mike Tomlin and say, what happened to the cultivation of leadership here or personal accountability here? And then George Pickens he did have a reputation coming out. He's sort of separate from the rest in that they knew what they were signing up for. They either bet on themselves to, be a part of his growth as a player and as a person, or figured, if nothing else, we'll get 3 good years out of him before we have to end this thing and move on. So it's a chicken or the egg thing with the Steelers and these receivers. I lean toward the side of Mike Tomlin has done a good job of getting production out of them, and they've all contributed to this streak of never having a losing season and making playoff games. Antonio Brown at least was part of winning some big games. But this newer wave, man, it just it hasn't been good enough, and it does sort of make you wonder, like when he talks about coaching is all about, getting guys with pedigree, and you can't run from coaching. You need to run to coaching. Why hasn't it panned out a little bit better in the long run with some of these players?
I think it's a big question. Now, I mean, here's the other thing too, is that like I don't necessarily think that wide receiver has been the Steelers' biggest problem as far as trying to get past things moving forward. I mean, when Antonio Brown was with the Steelers, I mean, he was a big reason why they were ever a threat. He was that guy. I think that like Diontae Johnson never really got as big of a chance to shine, but I think in that Chiefs game, you could think back, he might have had a couple drops in that playoff game that didn't work out. Chase Claypool certainly, his in the Browns game that he played in, he had big numbers, but they all came late. But I always looked at the bigger problem the Steelers had with that situation was their quarterback play fell off at the wrong time. When Ben Roethlisberger was on and he had a litany of weapons, it was working. And I point this out all the time. When the Steelers had Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, and Antonio Brown healthy with Ryan Shazier in playoff games, they were 2-0, and they were pretty good. The problem is they only had that crew twice in healthy in a playoff game. Every other time that they were either injured, and where at least one or two of those guys missed, or one of them got injured very early in the game, they lost those games. And I think that was part of the problem they went through. So I'm not so sure that getting rid of these guys is necessarily the bad thing. It's more so that they need to be able to hit on other spots of this team where leadership is so important that those situations don't matter. Like, for example, A.J. Brown does a lot of goofy stuff with the Eagles. He's reading books. He's going out. He doesn't like Sirianni. There's all this beef. But you know what makes it work? That offensive line kicks a lot of butt. And so that everything starts to work. And then Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. And then they have Saquon Barkley. And so now A.J. Brown can be that guy. And it's just part of it's just something they can endure because he brings talent to the table. If the Steelers still had a top tier offensive line and a premier running back, you know what? Maybe George Pickens isn't as much of a problem anymore because they have a leadership situation in place. And maybe that was also a reason why Antonio Brown worked for so long. Was you didn't just have Ben Roethlisberger, you had Pouncey, you had DeCastro. I remember in 2017, after Juju laid that hit on Burfict, he started goofing off, and I was covering that game there from Cincinnati, and he started goofing off after that and started to do things that was like he's going to get flagged. I remember David DeCastro just gripping him up and like saying something in his face and throwing him. And I remember seeing that it was like in a timeout break. And after that, Juju settled down. That leadership has not been on the offensive side of the ball since those guys left. And I think that might be the bigger problem the Steelers are going through right now is they need to redevelop an offensive leadership nucleus. And if George Pickens is the best player on your team, he can't be a part of that leadership nucleus the way he's been acting.
But in recent years, though, Chris, there have been games that the Steelers won. The Steelers were having success on offense, and guys like George Pickens and Diontae Johnson weren't happy because they weren't getting theirs. So that does fly in the face a little bit of the whole like kind of winning cures all mentality. And you even go back to like those 2018, 17 teams, especially 2018, I guess, because this was the end of Antonio Brown here. But like the AJ Brown stuff you mentioned, that was a distraction at times for the Eagles. He didn't self-destruct the way Antonio Brown did by the end of his tenure here in Pittsburgh. I think you could make a case that just the strained relationship between him and Ben Roethlisberger, who is not completely absolved of guilt in that rapport either by any stretch. But how did that impact the chemistry and dynamics of this team when they had those guys still in their prime and should have been able to go a little bit further? I wasn't expecting a random person like this to sort of weigh in on this subject, but earlier this week on X, for Antonio Brown reasons we don't need to get into or want to get into, but Asante Samuel, former NFL cornerback, had this to say, which I actually thought was kind of interesting. I never thought I'd be going to Asante Samuel for any sort of insight. I don't view him as a beacon of wisdom. He's crashing out on social media a lot himself, but he said to AB, if Mike Tomlin never babied you, the NFL would have been an afterthought. You couldn't survive anywhere else. The Steelers organization and players allowed you to act crazy. You're lucky you never played on my team. You would have been dealt with immediately and not by the coach. I do sort of want, like, is there something to that everybody was riding the AB gravy train for a while and nobody really held him accountable and he became a sad tale more than anything?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Asante Samuel played with Aaron Hernandez, and Aaron Hernandez was notably a goof off for the team, and then also was then a murderer. And so I don't know if they were willing to set him straight. So I think that like I think he was in a culture where winning cured all for a little bit, and then eventually like they were like, oh no, that guy literally commits crimes. We can't have him around anymore. So I don't know if Asante Samuel is as I think that's a glass house he's throwing from there.
Yeah,
But I do think
their glass house does have 2 rings though, but
again because of Tom Brady. If you flip Tom Brady to the Steelers during that era, I bet you that cures a lot of the ails there too. And I hear you there. And again, I think there's a bit of truth to that we now know from Ryan Clark. They wanted to fight him with the way that Antonio Brown used to talk to Dick LeBeau. But the Steelers saw like, hey, that kid's actually pretty special. We want to keep that in line. And so they tolerated it. But hey, I think you talk to a lot of people say, we'll tolerate it if that guy gets the job done. I remember Jimmy Johnson was one time on a show, and someone said to him, hey, you treated everyone the same, right? Because when Emmitt Smith, if he said he wanted to do something and it was crazy, you told Emmitt Smith to back off, buddy, and you're no bigger than the team. And Jimmy Johnson said, no, I did what Emmitt Smith wanted because he's Emmitt Smith and the best running back in football. And that's what you do as a coach. And so I think sometimes people get over the top with the coaches always have to be hard things. When a player's that good, you acquiesce. Great coaches do. Chuck Noll did it. Bill Belichick did it. Jimmy Johnson, like a lot of these guys do it. Now, here's the thing is there has to be a line. And the question is the Steelers line too far, or have they been getting there? Because again, up until when AB was jettisoned out of the organization, or jettisoned himself out of the organization, he was bought 2018. He was still the Antonio Brown. And then after that, he was never the same. He did win a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, but I think we can all agree he wasn't the same AB there. And then he, literally tore his shirt off and ran off the field. I want to keep this discussion going. I think this is actually a pretty good one. We'll do that in the next segment here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, remind you, the show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're injured in an accident, or if you ever need help with workers' compensation, you got to call Edgar Snyder Associates today, because when you need workers' compensation help, you got to remember when the people who decide when you're better, when your treatment is over, and when your benefits are over, it's not anyone that's on your side, it's the insurance company's doctors. So if you want someone on your side, you need to call Edgar Snyder and Associates today, 1-800-94-EDGAR, because they will fight for your workers' compensation rights that you deserve. Again, that's 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. So, Brian, let's continue the discussion, because I think this is kind of where this is the bigger picture discussion right now going on for the Steelers. Like moving forward, like I think they've done these experiments. Moving forward, I think one of the biggest objectives this year is to get that leadership in place so that they can take in those malcontents, and that those guys, because again, I think you can deal with guys that goof off. Like if you remember, like Lamar Woodley, who wasn't a malcontent, but Lamar Woodley would goof off now and then. But you had Casey Hampton and James Ferrier and guys to set them straight. And like there's clips from the from the Super Bowl 43 season where Lamar Woodley would make a play, and you see Casey Hampton saying, oh, you think you're great? You're just good. You got to be better. And Tomlin would set him straight, and Hampton would set him straight. And then eventually, Lamar Woodley was the guy that made the game-winning sack at the end of the game that ended, Kurt Warner and Larry Fitzgerald trying to come back after the San Antonio Holmes touchdown. I think they need that nucleus back in place on the offensive side of the ball. It's there on defense, but they do not have that on offense, and that's something that they have to do very soon.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to build that back up for a while. I think they viewed Kenny Pickett as somebody who could be that type of guy leading from the quarterback position. I mean, that didn't work out for a number of reasons, most notably because he just wasn't that good of a player. You've got to have a certain ability and talent and production to even take on that mantle and get guys to gravitate toward you. We've heard the Najee Harris comments. I don't know. I can't remember if we talked about it on the show, but I wrote about it. Like, he felt kind of lost for a lot of his time here, because he's like, who am I even going to go to? Like, yeah, I can go talk to Cam and TJ and those guys, but like, they're not on the same side of the ball as me. They don't have the same objective as me when it comes to the specifics of any given week. So I think he, was miscast a little bit in terms of maybe he was more of a follower, or at least at first wanted to be more of a follower than he was forced to be a leader. I think Pat Freiermuth is somebody who gets it, and that's a big reason why he's gotten his second contract in addition to what he does on the field. This is the thing people have to remember, I think, to reframe it all around the George Pickens situation these last couple of days, Chris, is whether you're talking about acquiring free agents or draft picks, or even once they're in your building and on an NFL roster, it's never just about the ability and the talent. There's always a component of the off-field stuff, how you carry yourself, there's a reason why football character is such a big buzzword all the time in the NFL, because that stuff's not everything, but it does count for something. You can't have a 53 choir boys who, yes, sir, no, sir, all the time, and there's never any friction. We know that. But you also you've got to have a certain amount of team first mentality. And, I think that does often go the furthest toward building the right locker room culture and producing winning results.
I mean, let's face it. Like I brought up Chuck Noll, and people were like, "Well, who did Chuck Noll tolerate?" Ernie Holmes shot at police helicopters and played during the same week. It's documented now by Their Life's Work, Gary Pomerantz in his book on the Steelers, how like Ernie Holmes would show up to team gatherings and would be so drunk that like they would just but everyone would, even Joe Green was scared to stand up to that guy, that they would just let him pass out, and then it would take like half the team to like pick him up and take him to whatever room he needed to sleep it off in. Like, teams deal with guys as long as they're good enough to be dealt with. And I think that's something that people need to realize. But it's just about, how do you deal with them? And do you have the pieces around to make that not matter as much? And to your point, I think they've been trying to do that. Kenny Pickett, I thought that was the biggest thing Kenny Pickett could do, because I covered Pitt when Kenny Pickett took command of that locker room and said, when they lost to Western Michigan in the year that they won the ACC championship, he said, we are not going to let this happen again. This is our year. And that team with him and DeMar Hamlin rallied behind their leaders and pushed forward. I think the Steelers saw that, and they wanted to say, hey, if we can get that kind of leadership in our room, even if he's just a mid-tier quarterback, that could be useful as long as we get all the other pieces right. But the problem was, Kenny Pickett wasn't good enough to even be a mid-tier quarterback. Their offensive line was still in shambles. Najee Harris still wasn't turning into a leader himself. And so I think that plan crumpled. This plan, though, I think they're in a situation where, like, hey, you had a defensive nucleus that was in its prime that could make up for that and buy that group time. That defensive nucleus maybe has a couple more years of it left of being at the level it's at. Now, maybe they can also develop another defensive nucleus if Porter becomes a shutdown corner, Harmon and Benton turn into a 1-2 punch, and other guys step up over the next few years. Like, it's not saying that the defense is about to definitely fall off, but I think there is an added urgency to get it right on the offense, not just from a talent standpoint, but also from a leadership standpoint, so that they can stop worrying about that side of the ball as much.
Yeah, I mean, hey, going back to your own Ernie Holmes anecdote, like doing crazy stuff off the field, criminal stuff off the field is one thing. That was never an issue for George Pickens here. When you start not blocking for guys, and you're running the wrong routes, and you're dogging it, and you're doing look at me stuff that loses your offense 15 yards, like, that is almost separate from off the field incidents that are causing distractions. That's the kind of thing that is literally impacting winning in the moment. And like, ideally you don't want to have to deal with either one if you're a coach or a GM or a team president, but in some ways, because of the bottom line business that is the NFL, what's the Mike Tomlin cliche, football's our game, our business is winning, like, you can tolerate a lot of the stuff that happens outside those walls if everything is just nails inside the sidelines. Antonio Brown, another great example. No one ever questioned the work ethic or the motor or anything like that on the field. When that stuff started to become a recurring theme and issue with George Pickens, man, that's where, there's obviously a breaking point, and they hit that officially on Wednesday.
They did. And I think that's the bottom line here, is that the Steelers were willing to put up with George Pickens. Here's the other thing. If George Pickens, even with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph over the past week, if he still balls out and he has like top 10 numbers, because again, that's the other part. George Pickens right now is not a top 10 wide receiver. I think
he is, which is a big problem. The inflated ego where he thinks he is also an issue with this.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that if he actually was, then you might be like, all right, we're putting up with this. But because he's not there yet, like if you look at his number again, he's had 1,000-yard season with the Steelers, and he hasn't taken off for a whole lot of touchdowns. He's had glimpses where you can see like, man, the potential is there for him to be top 10, and maybe he'll prove it this year with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb on the other side of him. Who knows? But right now he's not that, and I think that's the thing is the Steelers had to say, hey, we're moving on. We're moving on here to get that situation.
If he actually was and he was reliable and he was a guy you could count on, guess what? Steelers probably don't trade for DK Metcalf. We're sitting here talking about how much money are they going to pay George Pickens in August or September to lock him in for the long term. But yeah, he wasn't that. So here we are.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Brian's not going to be on the show because I've got an interview with DJ Thomas Jones. Thank you, Brian, for joining the show as always. Check him out on Chip Tam and Football every Tuesday here on the Post-Gazette podcast network. But DJ Thomas Jones, tight end from South Alabama, is listed as a Steelers fullback heading to rookie camp, which starts today, this morning. You're probably listening to this or watching this while we're at rookie camp covering it. But DJ Thomas Jones has a special story about how he ended up in the transfer portal. It wasn't because he wanted NIL money. It wasn't because he wasn't getting playing time at Ole Miss. It was because he wanted to be there for his mother. I want to talk to him and show that interview next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Stick around for that interview. But first, want to remind you that this show is also brought to you by UFC Gym Pittsburgh. Looking for a way to challenge your body and sharpen your mind? Step into something more than just a workout. Welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just training. It's about living the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by a third-degree black belt that builds confidence, strength, and flexibility, and real technique. Head down to UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about the exclusive 3-month introductory package today. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show with our interview of Steelers undrafted free agent fullback out of South Alabama, DJ Thomas Jones. Here is my talk with him earlier this week. We're here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter here with DJ Thomas Jones, Steelers fullback and tight end from South Alabama. He is going to be joining us at Steelers rookie camp. I'll be there covering it with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. DJ, how you doing today?
I'm great today. Like I said before, man, just blessed. Be in this position. I can't complain. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. DJ, I want our audience here in Pittsburgh to know more about you. So I wanted to lead off with the story of your college career path that people might not know. You originally started your career at Ole Miss and then transferred to South Alabama for a very real personal reason. Can you talk about your journey and what led to that?
Yes. I went to Ole Miss out of high school. It was just a place that I fell in love with. I love the people there. I love the culture that they were building. I'd say in the ending of my freshman year, going into my winter workouts for my sophomore season, I got a call, and my mom was really, really sick, and my stepdad at the time, he was doing everything that he could to make things work. There was a lot of stress on him, and I kind of saw that it took a toll on him, and I made the decision that day to get in the portal and just come home. I felt like he couldn't do it on his own, and I know that that's a lot of stress to be able to put the whole family on your back and do different things like that. So I really wanted to take the load off of him, and then also allow my mom to actually see me play, because it got to a point in time where she wasn't able to travel as much, and I thought it was great that I could have my family there and have such a big support system here. And I was just blessed that they gave me the opportunity to come here.
Well, one, that seems like a big sacrifice. I mean, Ole Miss is in the SEC. You go to South Alabama. I mean, it's the Sun Belt. You're switching conferences. You're switching up your whole life. But you're still being a student athlete. You're still doing the struggles. You got to keep up your grades. You got to keep up your workouts. You got to stay in shape. You got to play on this team. You got to learn a whole new team. What was that like, trying to balance all that while also trying to help take care of your mother?
It was actually really tough. I had to prioritize time management. When I want to say my senior year, I started looking for jobs. I finally got one at the hospital, so that really kind of threw things all around. But,
wow.
Yeah. So, like I said, it was pretty rough. But as I got into the swing of things, I started to prioritize my time. I go from work, work, then you go to practice, and after practice you go to class, and then you get a little bit of rest and you get ready to do everything all over again. So it was worth it.
So let me get this straight. You transfer to a new school, you learn a whole new football team, you're working a job while you're going to class, and you're being a football player trying to make it to the NFL.
Yes, sir.
And taking care of your mom. That's an amazing story. And could you let the audience know, how is your mother today? How have things gone since you moved back and you helped take care of her?
Yes, sir, man. She's great, man. It's everything that she had going on as far as the days that were the worst. And then there'd be days she couldn't get out of bed. There'd be days she couldn't talk. There'd be days she'd be swollen, like different things like that. To be honest, I haven't seen a day like that, and I can't even remember. So it's like, I'm just, like I said, man, I'm just so blessed to have her here and let her experience these different things, because there was a lot that was taken away from my mom that she didn't get to see. So for me to come home and her to watch me walk across the stage here, her to watch me play my last game, senior day, just for her to have all those things, man, I couldn't be more happy.
That's an amazing story. I'm very happy for you and for her and your family that you got to see that. And hey, maybe she'll be able to come to Pittsburgh and see you play as a Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That would be amazing. So let's get to talking about your football career. You're a versatile player. For those who don't know about DJ, you scored 12 touchdowns in your time with South Alabama. You played all over. You were you're basically an H-back. You played running back, receiver, and tight end. You've lined up in the slot. You've caught punch. You block people in space. You run the ball. You catch the ball. What did you do to make yourself a versatile athlete at the college football level? How do you work to be a player like that?
To be honest, it was kind of crazy how it worked. When I started out playing football, I was on defense. So it was kind of different. So I started out playing DN. I went from DN to safety in middle school. So I kind of saw everything from the opposite side of the field. And I would always wonder, hey, like what is it like on the other side of the ball? So it really like opened up a perspective for me. And then you sit back and you think, like, you don't see a lot of people move the way that I feel like I move, and some of the things that I feel like I do at the position. So it's like, okay, cool. That'd be pretty dope. So I really honed in on flexibility, being able to maneuver in uncomfortable situations, being able to put my hand in the dirt, still be my size and go up with the best of them. I feel like that's very important in the way that I play and my play style and in my characteristics as well.
I agree. When I watch you play, but you run hard. You're a do it all, do everything that you're asked of type of player. So you've kind of made yourself that glue piece for offenses to use. When I looked up some of your highlight tapes from South Alabama, and was watching how you went off against Northwestern State along with the rest of your team. You guys did some big things there. When you think back on your college career, what is the biggest accomplishment or the thing that you're most proud of that you did as a player?
The thing that I'm most proud of that I did as a player was being able to be versatile and handle off the field issues. I feel like a lot of people don't really take into consideration the off the field aspect. A lot of people see and hear football players and they just think about football, but we're people too. So like, it's to come on the field and know what you're doing, to be off the field and know what you're doing. Like, I think that was my biggest accomplishment as a player for me.
That's a heck of an accomplishment to have. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
When people go through stuff, not everyone makes it to through the other side and gets to stick with football. Some people got to sacrifice things. You clearly sacrificed a lot, but here you still are standing and pursuing your football career. So kudos to you for doing that. I want to also ask you, what element of your game do you think spoke loudest to NFL scouts? Because H-back ain't exactly the position that everyone's talking about when they're looking at the draft boards and they're like, who's the top fullback or H-back or guy is going to be here. So clearly you had to, there were things part of your game that spoke loudly to NFL scouts to get you in here. What do you think those were?
My physicality. I want to be violent at all times. Just my willingness to get in there and do it. I want to be in the messiest situations that I possibly can be in. A lot of guys on the team, They came up with their own category for me. It was first team all violence. So yeah, so that's my thing. I try to do everything that I can with a chip on my shoulder, with the utmost aggression. So I think that's me.
Well, that's very much. I can tell you, Steelers fans, they love violence. They love their blue collar workers. So you'd fit right in with that style. Are there any NFL players that you watched that you styled your game specifically after? Because I mean, again, that's a very specific role to have in football.
When I was growing up, I used to watch Santana Moss.
Get out of here.
Yes.
All right.
Him, LaDainian Tomlinson.
Mm-hmm.
And then Le'Veon Bell with the Steelers. So, oh man, that's his patience back there is something else, man. So those are the guys that when I started out, I started modeling my game after, just their patience, their love for the game, the different things that they were able to do on and off the field. Like, those are my guys.
I hear you entirely. A lot of Steelers fans remember Le'Veon Bell and all the great runs that he had here in Pittsburgh. So let me ask you this. Have you had a chance to talk with Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith? Because in studying him over the years, last year and even his years with the Falcons and the Titans, he loves his H-backs. He loves those extra tight ends that he can move around as chess pieces. Have you talked with him about what your role might be and how you could fit into the Steelers offense?
Yes, sir. We talked a lot about it. Just throughout the whole process entirely. He has a vision for me, and he has a plan for me, and I'm just so grateful. He wants me to be, like you said, that moving chess piece. Wherever I fit in, that's where I want to be, and that's where he wants me. So
awesome. You're getting to Pittsburgh here for rookie camp, I believe, begins Friday officially. So what is the biggest thing you're looking to show as soon as you arrive that you want to make clear to coaches and players and fans what kind of player and person you are?
I am that do-it-all guy. I don't want to be one-dimensional. I'm not nowhere near one-dimensional. I want to be that guy that can do it all. Fullback, running back, receiver, tight end, whatever it is, I want to be that guy.
Absolutely. All right. The last thing's here for you, DJ. I got to ask you, what do you know about Pittsburgh? And is there anything particularly that you're excited about that you're like, I've heard about this and I got to try it?
There's this it's a food hall, and I'm a foodie.
You're a foodie. That's good.
I cannot remember the name of the food.
Is it Permanis? You thinking about fries on a sandwich?
Yes,
sir.
There is a food hall. I'm so excited to try it. I saw a tweet that Yahya Black posted, and he said it is beautiful coming into Pittsburgh. He said it's the most beautiful thing that he's ever seen. I'm so excited to go through that tunnel, man. You have no idea. I'm excited, man.
Well, Pittsburgh's excited for you. When you get to town, definitely try a Permani sandwich. It's one of the staples of the city. Yeah, and I'll listen. When you get to rookie camp, if you haven't tried one yet, I'm gonna get on you because I'm gonna be, hey, where's what you think of the Permani sandwich? So,
yes, sir.
DJ, thank you so much for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Good luck to you and everything at rookie camp. We'll be seeing you there when we cover DJ at rookie camp here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming your way here on the North Shore Drive podcast. That was our interview with DJ Thomas Jones. If you were intrigued by that, we will have a Sunday feature story in the paper where we also talk to his mother, Chandra Jones, about all the things that DJ sacrificed to be there for her. Read more of that in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by subscribing to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. You can also check out all of our coverage of rookie camp where DJ, along with Derrick Harmon, Kaleb Johnson, and the other Steelers rookies like Ohio State quarterback Will Howard will be making their first debut working out with the team and talking to Pittsburgh media. Get all that coverage at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And remember to subscribe to our podcast channel here on your favorite podcasting apps that are on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We'll see you here in rookie camp later today from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.